on the first panel. Mr. Chairman, I know you're not ultimately making the decisions that you're sitting in right now for Mr. Issa, but there might be another way around this. If we're having a hearing today that effectively limits the ability of women to present their case on why they deserve to have access to the full range of reproductive health care, if we can't have somebody like Sandra Fluke testify today about her medical condition and why access to contraception is so critical to her health, if we are now approaching the last minutes of this hearing without the ability to hear the other side of this debate. There are two sides. I admit that there's a very important question about religious freedom, but there is also a very important question about women's health care. And we've been told repeatedly today by Chairman Issa and others that this is not the time, this is not the day to debate that second question of the appropriateness of the rule granting women access to contraception no matter where they work. Maybe there's one last way out of this, which is to schedule a second hearing, to have a second hearing that would allow us to focus on the question of whether or not we are jeopardizing women's health care by not having a strong rule in place to give them access to preventative health care services and reproductive health care services regardless of where they work. And so I'll pose the question to you, Mr. Chairman. Do you think that the majority would entertain the notion of convening a second hearing? I understand we probably might not even get a witness at that hearing. Maybe we'd get one, maybe we'd get two witnesses. But do you think that the majority would entertain the idea of convening a second hearing to focus on this question of the appropriate level of coverage? Will
the gentleman yield?
Will the gentleman yield? Certainly would yield.
I'd be happy to engage in this. But the title of today's hearing is Lines Cross, Separation of Church and State. Has the Obama administration trampled on freedom of religion and freedom of conscience, ? That was the question posed today about this hearing, not a question about your access or anyone's access to contraceptions. That is a completely different subject. When the Chairman, I'm sure the Chairman would be happy to have the conversation with you about future hearings and getting your input on that, but I don't think there's any movement afoot in Congress to ban contraception. That's not what this is about. It's about forcing religious institutions with deeply held moral convictions to do something that is counter to their faith. And with that, since I've taken so much time, I'd ask unanimous consent for 30 additional seconds for the gentleman.
Without objection.
Thank you very much, Mr. McHenry. I think once you've waded into this debate and selectively chosen to only talk about one side of it, which is the ability of a religion to decide whether or not they provide a basic range of health care benefits to their employees at a Catholic hospital or at a religious school, I think you have to talk about the second piece of the debate. I don't think you can choose as a committee. I don't think we should choose to only discuss one side of the debate. We thought that conversation should have happened today. We thought that at least one witness should have told the perspective of a woman struggling to get access to reproductive health care. But having failed in that effort, I think that we should have a second hearing. I know that we will have the deck stacked against us again, and I appreciate the gentleman for offering the fact that a discussion could certainly take place in the future. I think it would be incredibly important to this debate and to this committee to hear from women, that are struggling with this problem on a daily basis. And if that can't happen today, then, Mr. Chairman, I would submit it should happen in a hearing in the in the future, hopefully within the next several weeks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, point of clarification. There are two individuals that are female on the panel here now. And I just want to make sure the record reflects such.
I think, Mr. McHenry, it's duly noted, but we have had 9 witnesses. 2 of the 9 have been female. I don't think that accurately represents the debate that is happening in the public when you're talking about an issue relevant to women's health care. To have 2 of 9 witnesses be females, I think is offensive to the dialogue that's happening in the public, and I think that we can remedy that if we come back and do this a second time on the issue specific to the health care concerns of the millions of women, the 99% of women in this country who have used or do use contraception.
With that, the gentleman's time has expired. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize, as I recognize myself for the next 5 minutes of questioning time, to be able to comment on that as well, Mr. Murphy. The topic today is on religious freedom. The issue that came up with this, that the President stepped into the middle of, was an issue of religious faith. This is not an issue of limiting, though I'm quite aware that the media and that my friends on the Democrat side of the aisle are trying to make this into an issue to make conservatives look like they are barbarians at the gate trying to take away women's reproductive health. That is not the issue. As has been widely accepted, there are contraceptives available for free all over the country in many locations. Contraceptives are covered in most of the health plans in America. The confusing thing to the administration and to some individuals, and not saying Mr. Murphy is this way, is that people that have deep religious faith, their faith extends beyond the walls of the church. And to define you can have your religion as long as it is within the church building completely violates the principle of James 1:27, that true religion is this, that we watch out for the orphans and widows in their distress, and that we keep ourselves from being polluted by the world. That is a basic tenet of Christian faith.
Let
me finish, and I'll try to yield just in time. To be able to say you can practice your faith in this building and we'll honor it here, but if you extend out to taking care of the orphans and the widows in their distress, we're going to reach in as a government and define for you how you practice your religion. As I mentioned earlier in my earlier comments, the essence of this is, can this administration or any future administration step into a church or church-based institution and say, I know your doctrine, I have a different doctrine, you will give in to my doctrine or I will fine you. That is what occurred. Now, I understand the topic deals with something very controversial, but the essence of this conversation is, can the Federal Government step into a religious institution and redefine their doctrine for them? The real issue is, who defines the doctrine and religious teachings and religious practice of the church? I'd ask for unanimous consent for 30 seconds to give you an opportunity, then I need to finish up my questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just to your first point, which is that contraception is widely available and thus we don't need to have that perspective here and that we don't need to have a second hearing. Well, I don't think that a bunch of guys, a bunch of men on this committee should be making the decision as to whether contraception is available. And frankly, if you had allowed for Sandra Fluke to testify here today, she would have told you that it was not available to her, that it came at considerable financial burden to purchase it on her own. And so, again, I think we're getting to the root of this problem, is that to have a woman's perspective, have a healthcare consumer's perspective would be a lot more useful than for a bunch of males.
With that, I'd reclaim my time. And let me just mention this one thing to you as well on that. It's been interesting to hear the conversation about there should have been more women on the panel than the folks that mostly said that are now gone when women are on the panel. And there were conversations, there should have been some physicians on the panel. Now, if there is a physician on the panel, most of the folks that raised that issue are now gone and not participating in that conversation. So I understand that. The issue gets to the core still, can the Federal Government reach into a church or religious institution and define for them their doctrine? There is nothing in currently how this is being practiced from not continuing to press forward. Let me give you a good example of that. The Secretary shall make these decisions, opens it up, that within a year or two to say, currently we're forcing all these different providers to provide abortifacients, contraceptives, and sterilizations for free. Under the guise of full range of reproductive rights, there's nothing to stop the Secretary from stepping in 2 years from now and saying, now all institutions will cover abortions, the procedure for free. There is nothing in this that restrains that, because it's not the Federal Government paying for it. And so you'd say, well, wait a minute. No, this is stepping in saying those insurance companies will provide it for free. And so we'll step in between the contract between a religious institution and the insurance company that they've contracted with and say, we'll redefine the contract for you because I know you're religious and you don't know enough to know this is right, but we're going to tell you this is the right thing to do, and here is your new faith. Your new faith is you cover these things because it's the right thing to do. Your new faith will be that you'll cover abortions in some future day because that's the right thing to do to give the full range of reproductive health. And you could say that's some strange conspiracy, but quite frankly, we just watched the Catholic bishops lose a contract for taking care of human trafficking after they had tremendously high scores for one reason: they would not encourage abortions. Nothing covered abortions for them. They would not say to the people they were taking care of, there is a place to go get an abortion. And because they wouldn't do that, they lost the contract. This is a religious issue. And it is one of these things that I understand when you're with your own party, you look at that administration and want to help protect them and deflect the issues. Long term, this has serious consequences regardless of who is the president at some future day. What is the role of the church in that? With that, I'd be very honored to thank you for coming and sharing of your own time.